Hey everybody, Yankee here. For a couple of days now, I've been promising everybody a side-by-side quality and performance comparison between the Kimber K6s double action single action and the new Diamondback SDR, which I will be giving away here pretty soon. So I thought I better go ahead and get to it now. Now, before I actually begin the comparison here, I want to say that I do think that the Kimber K6s double action single action is probably the best small revolver you can buy right now. So this is going to be some tough shoes to fill for the SDR. Now, these guns are actually very similar. They're both snubbies. They both are about the exact same size. The differences are within like 1/10 of an inch in every way. The weight is very similar, especially when you take into account the different material of the grips. Just overall, these guns are very similar. Both of these guns are also full stainless steel builds, and they both hold 6 rounds of .357 Magnum or .38 Special. So as you can see, these guns are very close competitors. Just looking at them, there's not a lot of differences you're going to see right off the bat. Both of these guns are also double action, single action. You know, they have a hammer that can be cocked for single action fire, or you can just pull the trigger and fire it in double action. I will say that one detail you'll notice right off the bat, though, is that some of the smaller pieces are much more refined on the Kimber, and the hammer is one of those. The hammer on the Kimber is just much better than the hammer on the SDR. Now, functionally, is this going to make a difference? Not really, but sometimes those attentions to detail can make a big difference when you're choosing your firearm. Now, speaking of triggers, one difference you'll notice right off the bat between how these guns look is the trigger guards themselves. The Kimber trigger guard is more even overall. It's more of a pill shape, whereas the SDR trigger guard tapers a lot more towards the front. It's a lot narrower and a lot deeper at the back because of the different shape of the trigger there. So that is one visual difference. Will it make much difference when you're shooting a gun? No, you're not going to notice that. The only issue I could see from this is if you had bigger hands and big fingers, the fact that the trigger guard on the Diamondback comes down a little more makes it far more likely it might rack your knuckles a little bit, but I don't think that's very likely to be an issue for most people. One place where they're very similar is they both use a push button release for the actual cylinder of the gun. Now, this is something that I think of Ruger when I think of these type of releases, but both of these guns also use it. Both of them work very well. I will say, though, that I do like the shape of the one on the SDR better than the one on the Kimber. As I said before, both these guns are snubbies, so they both have the short barrel. They both have engraving on the barrel for the name of the gun. Now, both of these are very well made. They're one-piece barrels, but I do like the looks, once again, of the SDR better in this case because I like that cut, that angled cut on the barrel that continues down from the top strap. That's just another little detail that I prefer on the SDR. The front end itself also has a little more shape to it, more of a sharper line on the SDR. I like that better, but some people might like the look of the Kimber better. I would understand if they like those more rounded off features. And as far as the crown goes, well, they're both nice reverse crowns, but I actually like the deeper one on the SDR better. Once again, will it make a difference? No, this is just looks. So it'll come down to which end do you like the looks of better here if you were choosing between these two guns. Now, one of the biggest visual differences between these two guns is the cylinder. The SDR has a very cool shaped cylinder. It's very LCR-ish, you know, from Ruger. It's got that really rounded off. They took away a lot of excess metal. Whereas the one on the Kimber is a little more robust looking, but it's also kind of flat and plain. They've really melted it down to where there's very little detail to it, and I can't say that I love that. I actually like the look of the cylinder on the SDR much better. However, both of them are just fine and will work just fine. It's just a visual difference, and it does save a little weight on the SDR, which is probably why it's a little bit lighter than the Kimber. Now, as far as the chambers themselves go, they are both recessed, which is a nice feature on one of these guns. However, I will say the recessing is better on the Kimber than it is on the SDR. It's a little bit deeper and a little bit nicer, and the star on the Kimber is a little more robust, but both of them are very nice. And when it comes time to remove that cylinder for one reason or another, one big difference between these guns is the Kimber has a regular set screw over here, whereas the SDR actually has a push button for quick and easy release of that cylinder. That's a nice feature, especially when you're cleaning the guns. Now, going back up to the barrels for a minute here and looking at the forcing cones, you'll see the one on the Kimber is a little more simple. It just looks like it's been cut clean there. The one on the SDR, surprisingly, seems a little nicer. They're both fit very well. They both have nice cylinder gap, very consistent, very clean. But I like the one on the SDR a little better. It's a little bit more shallow, but it's been chamfered off on the inside and the outside. It's had a little machining done to it there, and I like that. I think it's a little attention to detail. It's one of the few places that the SDR beats the Kimber when it comes to a little attention to detail. Now, another thing you're going to look at when you're comparing two small revolvers is what type of sights do they have? Are they gutter sights, fixed sights, night sights, what? Well, both of these guns are kind of rare because they both have a dovetailed rear sight that is actually kind of fit into the body, molded to the shape of the body. Now, I will say the ones on the Kimber are a little more robust. They're a little bigger, a little easier to see, etc. But the ones on the SDR are fiber optic. They came that way from the factory. The rear sight on the Kimber is actually, I think, a little nicer made, but I'm going to take that fiber optic. And it's the same with the front sights. If you look at the Kimber, it's a pinned, just regular white dot sight. And on the SDR, it's a pinned fiber optic sight. So once again, that fiber optic sight on the SDR would be my choice. Now, when it comes to grips on the gun, I'm going to have to say the Kimber came with nicer wood grips. But if you prefer rubber grips, well, the ones on the Diamondback are from Hogue, and they're very nice. But one nice thing about the Diamondback over the Kimber is that the Diamondback takes any J-frame grips for a Smith & Wesson. So you have a huge option for grips for this gun, whereas that's not the case for the Kimber. They're proprietary. In fact, the ones from the double action, single action model don't fit the regular model and vice versa. So on the Diamondback, you're going to have a lot more options. Now, another comparison I want to make between these two guns that I've kind of touched on some throughout this video, and I want to go over it now in a more general term, and that's the fit and the finish of this gun. When you look at the fit, the Kimber is going to be better. I mean, it's just a little bit overall better made gun. It's a little nicer in pretty much every way except for those small details we've talked about in depth here in this video. But the Diamondback is no slouch. It's fit very nicely. Now, the edges are a little sharp on this gun, but this is their cheaper gun. If you got the one with the polished finish, the edges would be a little more polished out, look a little nicer. This one, you save a little money, but it is a little less refined when it comes to the fit. And it does fall down a little bit in the finish. Also, there are a few little machine lines you can see in a couple of places. There's some edges that are a little rough. Whereas the Kimber, it may not be fancy, but it's well brushed out. It looks really nice. All the edges are nice and clean. There's no variation in the finish. That's not the case with the Diamondback. It needs a little help as far as finish is concerned. And if I was keeping this gun, a little 600 grit sandpaper and some synthetic steel wool and about an hour and a half of my time, or maybe 2 hours of my time, and this gun would be looking every bit as good as the Kimber, but straight out of the box from the factory, the Kimber is slightly better fit and much better finished. Now, when it comes to performance of both of these guns, it's almost identical. Like I said, similar weights, similar sizes, and the trigger pulls are also very similar on these two guns. They're both at around 9 pounds, maybe a little under for double action. And when you come to single action, the Kimber's about 2.5 pounds, and the SDR is just under 2 pounds usually. So very close in performance, and you're really not going to notice much of a difference there. It'll probably come down to which do you like the physical differences of more so than the performance differences of. For example, if you like the way the trigger is shaped better on the Kimber and it feels better on your finger, or you like the slightly larger trigger on the SDR, that's how you'd be making your decision on these two, because like I said, as far as function goes, they're almost identical. So in the end, which one of these would I choose? Well, I would choose the Kimber, of course. It is the better gun. It's a little bit better in most every way, except for some physical features which are subjective, but overall, it is a better gun. Like I said, it's one of the best small revolvers you can buy. But here's the thing, it's more than 50% more expensive than the Diamondback. So if you're not worried about things like a little bit of fit or a little bit of finish difference, and you can finish it yourself like I would, I could very easily see going for the Diamondback over the Kimber. In fact, I would probably like the Diamondback better once it was all finished up because I like some of the physical differences better. I do like some things better on the Kimber, like that hammer and trigger design, but overall, I like the looks of the Diamondback better. I like the design of it better. I like that quick release cylinder. I like the sights better. I like the overall looks of it better with the sharper lines. So I kind of like the Diamondback better. And if I was on a budget and money was an issue, which I am on a budget and money is an issue, I would probably go with the Diamondback if I didn't own either of these.